Renegotiation, the terms and focus on core programs. I know that some of the groups I've been involved with have done that. We've gone back to major donors and said, you know what, this capital campaign has stalled, this particular initiative has stalled, here are the reasons for it, and I think good, clear communication with key donors and things like that on those types of issues is warranted, and the funds have been released, if you will, from a restricted type of gift to an unrestricted gift to fund the programs. And then obviously working closely with existing funders to address challenges. This I think is ongoing, and you can see by the numbers it hasn't changed much. As far as trends with funders, this is my list that I see, having been on both sides of the table. I think you heard this again from Sherry earlier. Evidence-based outcomes. There are a lot of great organizations, and intuitively we know they are producing positive results in addressing a particular segment of our community that needs help. But what are the evidence-based outcomes? How can we prove that our program is creating a positive result from a statistical and a scientific perspective? And unfortunately, there's some cost associated with that, but as your organization grows, if that's what you want it to do, the more sophisticated the donor, the more sophisticated the foundation, you're going to see that be a requirement, not just something that's talked about. Again, I talked about collaboration with others. We're seeing that where you have certain segments of the population in the community that we're serving, but we're doing it with different programs. Is there a way to work together so that some of the backroom accounting, maybe legal, insurance, fundraising can be shared in a way. Eradication or systemic change. The one that comes to mind in this area is the California Endowment. They've shifted, it's my understanding, they've shifted some of their focus to be more highly directed at one geographical area and certain programs to put enough money and enough resources into it that they can deal with the issue once and for all. And this seems to be a trend that is across the United States, where instead of giving a little bit of money to a whole bunch of organizations spread out geographically to pick key areas and key cities and then neighborhoods or communities within that area to deal with educational issues. In their case, it's always health related or circles back around to that. But that seems to be a growing trend. Sustainability, organizations and donors want to give to winners. They don't want to be the angel all the time. That's an early phase of funding for an organization, but once an organization's around for a while, they need to be able to demonstrate sustainability in their revenue generation, in their board, in their management team, that this is a group that's well run. And I think that if you take some of the things we talk about today as far as the activities and you build your plans around that and you can share those with funders, that it's going to increase the likelihood of you receiving funding and possibly more funding. Yes, ma'am.
So are you saying basically that emerging organizations are just going to, I mean, they're always challenged, but that the funders now are not going to be supporting as much emerging organizations or new start organizations? Because people are constantly running to people who want to start organizations or emerging organizations that are having this problem, and there used to be a greater pool of funders who were interested to start.
And I think the question was, is there, if I'm hearing you right, is there less of an emphasis on emerging and startup type of organizations, and funders are gravitating to maybe more stability or longer term organizations? And I think that's a trend. I think we have over 11,000 nonprofit organizations in San Diego County. That was the last number I saw. Now, about half of those are faith-based. That is a lot of folks that need to be funded. So I think there is a little pullback for the larger donors and foundations that, hey, do we really need another, organization? So my answer to you would be yes, but that's my opinion. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how that compares with other cities of similar size?
No, I don't. That's a very good question. The question was, how does that compare to other cities? San Diego is a little bit of a different community. Based on talking to folks around the country from time to time, it's a little different. We are a big city and have a lot of big city issues, but we operate as a small town. And I see that with some of my public volunteerism and then also in the nonprofit world. I think there was another comment? Yes, sir.
I've heard that said numerous times about numerous aspects of San Diego. I'm just curious, elaborate on that. In what way do you see us into operating like a small town?
Well, I think just the way that San Diego has grown in its history, that we haven't, we're a branch town. There aren't many corporate headquarters here. You'll see when we get into one of the other slides, there's not one major national foundation that's headquartered in San Diego. So I think the way that people get here are a variety of ways, but then it's a very small town. I mean, there's a lot of connections even in this room, and I've been in San Diego 20-some years, and it really operates from a small town. So I'm not sure why it's that way. And quite frankly, I don't think in the public and the nonprofit side that we are very sophisticated in some of the way endowments are set up, and half the money that comes into San Diego for nonprofits is from out of town. So that, to me, I'm not sure what the reason is. Yes, ma'am.
Was that 11,000 for the county?
I believe so. Yeah, that's for the county. And then there was another comment. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say to the woman who was asking if the same is true in other areas, I just moved down from the Bay Area where I was working with lots of foundations and got lots of feedback. And what you're saying is definitely true up there. They're definitely cutting back, less funding for new organizations. They're investing in known organizations and known outcomes.
Good point. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My question is that for those who are startup and emerging organizations, what would be, since the trend is moving towards more established organizations, what would be the tactic now for those organizations to fund?
Well, I think for a startup, that initial plan needs to be very buttoned up, and there needs to be some initial investment money. There needs to be some angel donors that are willing to start up and bet on the concept and the outcomes. And then the quicker that you can build a very viable board, board development is very critical for early stage, because they are a part, as we'll get into the presentation, they are a part of your fundraising team, a very important part, especially at the early stages before you have awareness out in the community. So those would be the good planning, some investment money, and a good board. Okay. Last but not least, multi-year grants. This kind of cuts both ways, unfortunately, because some foundations, and the Parker Foundation was one of them, that when assets were performing very well and investments were performing very well, we made multi-year commitments to folks over a period of time, and now those assets have dropped, but we obviously still need to fulfill those multi-year commitments. So it's cut out of what I'll call the discretionary money for a year or two until things start to move in the right direction and we fulfill those requirements. But I still think this is a very good strategy in asking